5 ethics for the future of youth ministry. Here they are. Number 1, the contextual or missiological ethic. What I mean by that is how important it is to understand the relationship between sociology and theology. They go hand in hand as context, sociology, and content, theology. We must raise students who would rather be the church and not just go to church. We must get students to understand that they can serve God in the context of their world. All right, number 2, the ethic of diversity. 51% of Gen Z is non-white. Did you know that? 51% of Gen Z is non-white. This is the largest percentage in American history. This fact must shape the way we do youth ministry in the next 10 years. If it doesn't, then we're missing this incredible opportunity to run with the message of diversity, race education, total inclusion, right? Do you know that we could be on the verge of rewriting race relations in America? That's right, because for the first time in American history, a generation is predominantly non-white. We could leave a story of healing for Alpha Gen if we simply continue in this unity, healing, and inclusive emphasis that we need to bring to youth ministry. We need to capture this moment that we're in. It's so important right now. All right, the third ethic for the future of youth ministry is the family. The family has been disintegrated in America. We're not just raising a fatherless generation anymore. We are raising a fatherless, a motherless, and a siblingless generation. I can't think of a time in Next Gen that we need a more important, a greater emphasis on family. I mean, look at the athletic programs and the language that they use in the locker room, right? Most of athletics uses the term family. Hey, this group is a family, and right, these are my brothers, or these are my sisters. Think about it this way. The world loves teenagers conditionally. If the church could love them unconditionally, it might be one of the easiest ways to grow your youth ministry. I truly believe a genuine culture of unconditional love and acceptance would be a viral growth tool for any student ministry, because students need to be loved unconditionally and not conditionally. The classic family structure that was such a strength in our nation's past has been lost, disintegrated. But youth ministry has the potential to change society at the family level. President Ronald Reagan said this over 40 years ago. If you want to fundamentally change a society, it begins at the dinner table, at home. The fundamental element to change any society starts at home. Healthy homes raise healthy students who build healthy societies. Hey, number 4, the fourth ethic in the future of youth ministry is the sexuality ethic. Identify among the Gen Z and the Alpha Gen, identification, their identity, their purpose, their being, why they exist is high amongst Gen Z and Alpha. And right now, our culture is redefining gender. It's redefining their significance. I counted over 50 gender types. Over 50 gender types just in the last 5 years. I wrote a book on it, and you can read it there. But it's stunning to see the variety of ways that people are trying to define their sexuality when they don't understand who they are. They grasp for terms. Maybe you've heard of the noun self now. No longer is it pronouns, now it's called noun self, right? I can call myself whatever I want to be. This revolutionary, this sexual revolution that's going on with identity and naming, this fluidity of gender is disastrous, and it destroys any culture that loses the sanctity of gender and the sanctity of sexuality and the sanctity of marriage is on a slippery slope of destruction. Listen, the deception that is clear over this sexuality, the deception that is clear, must be dealt with truth. We must bring truth into it. Just recently I was in Nebraska and I had a conversation with a young lady in the church, raised in the church, about the power of words spoken over her life when she was young that had such a shaping in a destructive way over how she felt about herself, when it could have been those words that were spoken from a truthful perspective, a biblical perspective, and not a cultural perspective that could have changed the way she chose to live her teenage years. And now that she's a young adult, she's come around and understood the truth of this matter and not the deception. Listen, the intent of God in Scripture is clear. A male and a female, no middle ground. And our identity is not about our emotion, it's about an ethic. Our identity is not about a feeling, it's about our faith. I don't feel a certain way, right? If I feel a certain way, then I am. No. It gets down to who I am, who God says I am as creator, not who I feel like I want to be as created. Listen, the greatest future principle or ethic that we can have, these are important. These 4 things that I just mentioned are important. But let me give you one that I believe is the greatest. Because I think this ethic, this last ethic, number 5, is the key to all of the others. Okay? If we want to handle each of these first 4 needed ethics, then this is how we do it. Number 5 is the theology ethic. We need to introduce theology back into youth ministry, back into children's ministry, back into next gen. Discipleship must be restored in youth ministry, or we will raise another generation void of a biblical worldview. Another Gen Z stat that we have shared often here, and I know you're familiar with, that should influence the future of next gen, is that only 4% of Gen Z has a biblical worldview. The stats are coming in right now on Alpha Gen, and they're not much better. I want to wait and hold off on those because those articles and those queries are still being done. But this generation, hear me, this generation includes more atheists than any generation in American history. 13% of Gen Z is considered themselves atheists. 31% are nuns, no affiliation religiously at all. A theology ethic is critical for youth ministry in the future because of the generational loss of faith that we've had from the grandparents to Gen X to the millennials to Gen Z and now to Alpha Gen. We need a restoration of theology. All the statistics show this spiraling downward of Christian thinking and worldview. And we got to put the brakes on it. We got to stop it somehow. And we've got to bring a theology ethic back into youth ministry, back into children's ministry. I know people say, well, it wasn't lost. We've been doing that. Well, whatever we've been doing the last 20 years has produced a 4% biblical worldview in Gen Z. So whatever we have been doing, we need to change and become more effective at it. So how do we do that? Let me get real practical before we end this podcast. Here's how we can restore a theology ethic in youth ministry. 1, we need a greater emphasis on preaching directly from the Bible and not just from a movie series or the headlines or the news or social media or TikTok, right? Directly from the scriptures. Number 2, creating our preaching or teaching series around a passage of the scriptures for an entire month. I know sometimes series are not popular. Maybe sometimes they are. But stay in a passage for a month. Stay in a series for a month. Number 3, biblical worship. Look at the songs that you're singing and get back to character. Get back to the nature of Christ. Number 4, biblical counseling. Number 5, redeeming social media for the purpose of theology. Using your stories to promo Bible studies. You get back to the social media, okay, this footprint that's not just entertainment, okay, but discipleship. All right, listen, as we've noted, we have a crisis in our faith in this generation. that we are serving a God we do not know. And these ethics can literally introduce. I heard someone say to me, we need to reintroduce Jesus to a generation. No. We need to introduce Jesus to a generation because they don't know him. They don't know who he is, because the only people who do not serve God are people who do not know God. Makes sense? Once they know him, they're caught and they'll serve him. Listen, each of these disciplines will help to shape what next gen looks like in the coming years. It will require all of us as youth leaders doing our part to turn these statistics around so that Alpha Gen does not have a 4% biblical worldview. Can we get it back to 19% where the millennials were? Or 32% where Gen X were? Or the 65% biblical worldview of the silent generation and the grandparents of today? Do you know that Gen Z is closer to their grandparents than they are their parents? It's the number one influence on the Gen Z's life. They talk about how close they are in family relationships to their grandparents. Could it be that the faith of their grandparents, the very thing that Gen Z is missing, is what they desire in a family relationship? And so we have to build the faith back into millennials, their older brothers and sisters, and to some, their parents, and back into Gen X, so that we see a faith formation built through the years. Listen, these ethics, I think, will help us. Without a doubt, the future of next gen must include the development of these 5 disciplines, these 5 ethics, these 5 spiritual disciplines. All right. Hey, thanks for joining us. We'll be back again next week with another topic in youth ministry.